you look at the league table on Christmas Day and go, yeah, we can have a good go here. I'm sure there was plenty of Paisley teams who did similar.
Yeah.
It always felt to me that, growing up hearing about stories of the Paisley teams, it was you put your foot down in January and February, and then when it sort of really matters. And so this idea of being phenomenal from the first day to the last and barely dropping a point, I think is a nonsense and is a false nostalgia, and teams have never really done that. There's been different ways of winning leagues, but there's always been a peak. Is that at their end, or are you sort of front runners who leaves everyone in the dust? But there's always periods during a season where teams are flying and playing well and look imperious, and then there's other times when you're not looking so great and you might have a few injuries, or you might have a bit of fatigue, or just a few players all go out of form at the same time. That can happen as well. And the skill is, when people say, the sign of a champion is not playing well and winning, that this is what they're talking about. They're saying that you can't not play well and win all season, but what you can do is, in the periods where you're finding it hard because there's injuries or because a few key players have lost form at the same time, and you can't drop them all. Are you picking up points in those times? And that's what Liverpool have been phenomenal at this season, I think. There's times where we've played really well, and there's times where we've battered teams, and there's times where we've made teams look ordinary, and then there's been other times where we've looked a bit ordinary. But the skill is, what we've done this season is we've always been able to create chances. So even in the toughest games this season, we've generally scored. We go to Goodison Park. It's a rubbish game. We're crap. We nearly win it 2-1. And that's and that's what we've done this season. And we've also defended our penalty box really well, and we've also got the best keeper. And so even when teams are maybe going through our midfield a bit too easily, or when we're sort of looking a bit shaky, teams have found it hard to score against us as well, because of how well we defended our box and how good our goalkeeper is likely on Sunday. So when you throw all those things together, this would be a really hard team for anyone to beat. I don't like comparing two seasons too much, but I think 80 or 90% of league champions throughout time would have found, I'm not saying they wouldn't have beat this Liverpool team, but they'd have found them really tough.
There's one great example of a title-winning team that didn't blow everybody away, but is remembered in history for being literally invincible. Arsenal drew 12 times that season, if I remember rightly. So Arsenal, on the way to being the invincible team, drop a lot of points. They're not a phenomenal, all-conquering team.
No, I think, Neil, we've created a case for the defence against those who have been critical of Liverpool over the course of the past month. But without being blinkered about it, we've had some wobbles in the past 4 to 6 weeks, and we've looked at Liverpool performances as fans and not enjoyed a number of them. None of what John, Ian, or I said it doesn't still hold water. But I think it's, in a certain sense, would you agree we've had our cake and eat it, in as much as we're getting the job done we need to get done, which is to win this league, but also we've been able to expose our weaknesses and see what we need. If we want this league to be the start of something special rather than an end in itself, then I think the last month has been actually quite instructive to us in a broad sense.
Yeah, I think that there's fairness in that. I think also, though, we need to divorce the last month maybe from a lot of what's come before it, and also acknowledge that I think there's been, I think Sunday becomes a really good example of it against West Ham. I think there's been a genuine nervousness. I think that the tiredness, insofar as the tiredness, I don't even think it's fatigue. I think it's stress.
Yeah. Yes, that's what I'm saying. It's mental, not physical.
I think it's mental more than anything else. I think that, and dealing with the reality that you also have opponents, who are trying to stop you from doing what you want to do, and you're under the stress of, we've got to win this league because we're in the position that we're in, and it can't go wrong now. I thought it almost felt like the own goal against West Ham, it almost felt like it unshackled them. It almost felt like they could go...
The way it's happened.
Yeah, so fuck it, let's go and do it then.
Now,
so the sky's falling in, so now let's just sort it out, in a way. And it was so odd to see, because it was such a storm that they unleashed. I made a joke on the post-match, but I genuinely feel as though if the Robertson goal had counted for 3, they'd have won 4-3.
Yeah.
Fulham would have West Ham would have just been going, what on earth is this? This is overwhelming. And And I think it is hard for them. I think we've talked a lot about their experience, but what they experienced and what they were, even the players who experienced it once in 1920, it is just very different to what this is. Firstly, they just won a Champions League, and secondly, they won 26 out of the first 27. It's a different universe of what it is that you're doing at that point. But it's also worth remembering, when we talk about that 26 out of 27, there's a lot of 2-1s in there, and there's a lot of games where Liverpool have got to sort something out in the 80th plus minute, and they just do. Because that's what you do.
Yeah, we're not more stylish in that season. We win that bit more, but we're not more stylish.
I think we're not much more stylish, I would say, and even including this sort of slightly what can be called a wobbly period. So yeah, I think that there is. I think we can have our cake and eat it, and we can discuss a lot about changes that we think in the summer. I also think we're in a bit of a funny position where we still don't really know what he wants in a couple of areas, which is a bit mad. I find it difficult. I'm not sure even what before you even get to number 9 and the most attacking midfielder. I'm not even that sure what he wants from the fullbacks at this point. I felt like I had more of a sense of it when we were talking about what he was going to do when he was coming in than from what I've seen. But I think there's a bit of that as well because there's not been consistency of selection on the right-hand side. All of that, I think, I think that we will be seeing changes. And I think for these boys now, it is just a matter of let's get them over the line. And it may well be that because the next one is Leicester away, and it is should be straightforward, that you might well see them go up a notch and relax a little bit because they can look at where the league table is and the reality of it. The stress might just be diminishing after the West Ham game and they might play a little bit differently. But I think they have been playing under a lot of stress, more stress. I think it's been really easy for the outside media, more than Liverpool supporters, to act like Liverpool have just won this. I think for them, I think almost in a way, it wouldn't surprise me if they were all having conversations with each other or somewhere in the back of their minds could be fucking embarrassing if we don't win this now. If you see what I mean. Yeah, so I think all of that's played in. So I don't want to...
It's match point pressure you're talking about.
Yeah,
this is what we're
championship
witnessing
point.
before our very eyes.
Championship point, where so why does Roger Federer's been great, why does he need suddenly 5 championship points to do what it looked like he was making look easy earlier on?